They shaved a waitress's head for fun, but none of them knew who was sitting in the corner booth. It was supposed to be just another cruel prank, a group of men laughing as she cried, the whole thing streaming live to the world. But when a quiet man stands up, the diner goes silent. Because the man they just mocked is her husband. And not just any husband, a billionaire who's about to turn this small-town nightmare into a worldwide reckoning. As cameras flash and the world watches, the waitress who lost everything becomes the symbol of something much bigger. Faith, dignity, and the power to forgive when forgiveness seems impossible. But when the lies start spreading and her love is tested in front of millions, she has to decide. Will she fight the world to protect her truth, or let grace fight for her? When humiliation goes viral and love meets cruelty, who really wins, revenge or redemption? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Joe's diner, casting long shadows across the checkered floor tiles. The familiar scent of coffee and fresh-baked pie filled the air, mixing with the gentle hum of conversation and the soft clink of silverware against plates. Tessa Brown moved between the tables with an effortless rhythm born from years of practice, her shoes making soft squeaks against the polished floor. "Here's your sweet tea refill, Mr. Henderson," Tessa said, carefully setting down the glass. The elderly man looked up at her with kind eyes, nodding his thanks. Her smile came naturally, even though her feet ached and exhaustion weighed heavy on her shoulders after another long night caring for her mother. At the counter, Mama Jo watched over her domain like a protective guardian, her grey hair neatly pinned back and her apron spotless despite the busy day. The diner was her pride and joy, a warm haven she'd built from nothing after losing her husband. The regulars treated it like a second home, and Mama Jo treated them all like family. The bell above the door chimed, and Tessa's shoulders tensed slightly as Cody Hayes strutted in with his usual group of friends. They claimed their regular booth by the window, their voices carrying louder than necessary across the diner. Tessa took a deep breath, straightened her spine, and approached their table with her order pad ready. "Well, if it isn't our favorite waitress," Cody drawled, his smile sharp and mean. His friends snickered, and one of them whispered something that made the others laugh harder. "Love what you've done with your hair today. Is that the natural look, or did you just forget to brush it?" Tessa touched her hair self-consciously, the neat coils she'd carefully styled that morning suddenly feeling like a target. "What can I get for you all today?" she asked, keeping her voice steady and professional. "Maybe some fashion advice." Another boy piped up, eyeing her worn but clean sneakers. "I think I saw those same shoes at the Goodwill last week." More laughter. Tessa wrote down their usual orders, burgers and fries all around, and turned away, her face burning but her head held high. As she passed the counter, Mama Jo reached out and caught her arm gently. "Don't you pay them no mind, sugar," she said in a low voice, her eyes fierce with protective anger. "Some folks ain't learned kindness yet. The Lord's still working on them." Tessa nodded, grateful for the older woman's support. "I know, Mama Jo. They're just kids, really." "Kids who should know better," Mama Jo muttered, but she patted Tessa's hand and let her go about her work. The afternoon wore on, the sunlight gradually fading into the soft purple of evening. The dinner rush came and went, leaving behind a comfortable lull. Tessa used the quiet moment to slip into the back office, pulling out a piece of paper and a pen from her bag. "Dear Eli," she wrote, smiling at the familiar nickname. The world might know him as Elliot Graham, billionaire entrepreneur, but to her he would always be just Eli, the kind-eyed man who'd wandered into the diner one rainy morning and seen straight into her soul. "As my shift winds down, I'm thinking of you. I hope your business trip is going well. The diner's the same as always. Mama Joe's keeping us all in line, and Mrs. Patterson still insists no one makes coffee like I do. I miss you, but I understand why we keep things quiet. Your privacy matters to me, too. She paused, considering whether to mention Cody and his friends' taunts, but decided against it. Why burden him with such small troubles? Instead, she wrote about her mother's good day, about the first spring flowers pushing through the soil in their garden, about the simple joys that made up their life together. The letter complete, Tessa tucked it carefully into her bag. The neon sign outside cast a pink glow through the windows, flickering slightly. It would need fixing soon, she noted mentally. As she wiped down the counter with smooth, practiced motions, she hummed softly to herself, content in the familiar routine. Regular customers drifted in and out as closing time approached. Old Mr. Jenkins with his crossword puzzle and black coffee. The Thompson twins, fresh from basketball practice, sharing a chocolate shake. Mrs. Miller ordering her usual soup to go. Each one greeted Tessa warmly, their genuine affection a balm against the earlier mockery. "Child, you look tired," Mama Joe observed as Tessa finished restocking the napkin dispensers. "Your mama keep you up late again?" She was having trouble sleeping, Tessa admitted. "But we read together for a while, and that helped. She's doing better today." Mama Joe nodded knowingly. "The Lord gives us strength when we need it most. You're a good daughter, Tessa Brown." The diner's lights reflected off the polished surfaces, creating warm pools of light that felt like home. Tessa moved through her closing duties with practiced efficiency, her thoughts drifting to Eli. She understood why he needed to keep their marriage private. The media attention would be overwhelming, and neither of them wanted that spotlight. Their love was something precious and personal, not meant for public consumption. The neon sign flickered again, casting intermittent shadows across the counter she was wiping down. Tomorrow would bring another shift, another day of serving others with grace and kindness, regardless of how they treated her. It was who she was, who her mother had raised her to be, and who Eli loved her for being. As she gave the counter one final swipe, Tessa had no way of knowing that tomorrow night would bring changes that would shake her quiet world to its foundations. For now, there was just the peaceful rhythm of the diner winding down, the soft whir of the ceiling fans, and the gentle satisfaction of another day well spent in service to others. Outside, cars passed occasionally on the small-town street, their headlights sweeping across the diner's windows. The Georgia night was settling in, bringing with it the first chirps of evening crickets and the soft rustle of spring leaves. Tessa gathered her things, said goodnight to Mama Joe, and stepped out into the gentle evening air, carrying with her the letter to Eli and the simple contentment of a life lived with grace, even in the face of small cruelties. Saturday evening settled over Joe's diner like any other. The clink of plates, the hum of conversation, and the savory scent of home cooking filling the air. Tessa moved between tables with her usual grace, her cross necklace catching the overhead lights as she leaned to refill coffee cups and deliver steaming plates. The weekend crowd kept her busy, familiar faces mixed with travelers passing through town. Mrs. Davidson was telling anyone who would listen about her granddaughter's piano recital. The Martinez family occupied their usual corner booth, their young children coloring placemats while waiting for their dinner. It was just past 7 o'clock when the bell above the door chimed. Loud, slurred voices shattered the diner's peaceful atmosphere. Tessa's stomach tightened as she recognized Cody Hayes's booming laugh. He stumbled in with 5 of his friends, all of them red-faced and unsteady on their feet. "Look alive, everybody!" Cody shouted, holding his phone up high. "We're live on social media!" His friends whooped and jostled each other, nearly knocking over a chair. Tessa tried to focus on wiping down a recently vacated table, but she could feel their eyes on her. The hair on the back of her neck stood up as Cody's group got louder, their voices carrying across the diner. "Hey, church lady," Cody called out. "Show your fans how you pray." His friends snickered, phones out and recording. Tessa gripped her cleaning cloth tighter but kept working, remembering Mama Joe's words about rising above cruelty. Her cross necklace felt heavy against her chest as she heard their footsteps approaching. "What's wrong? Too holy to talk to us?" One of Cody's friends mock-whispered, drawing closer. "Maybe she's praying for our souls." "Nah, man," another chimed in. "She's probably worried we'll mess up her fancy dollar store outfit." The laughter grew louder. Tessa could see other customers shifting uncomfortably in their seats, some shooting concerned glances toward the kitchen where Mama Joe was working. A few teenagers at the counter quickly paid their bills and left, heads down. "Come on, guys," Tessa said quietly, trying to edge past them. "Let me do my job." Cody stepped directly into her path, his phone camera trained on her face. His eyes were glazed, his movements exaggerated. "But this is quality content. Our followers want to see the Saint of Joe's Diner in action." He reached out and flicked her cross necklace. "Tell us, Sister Tessa, does Jesus approve of this?" He gestured mockingly at her natural hair. "I mean, shouldn't you try to look more professional?" The words stung, but Tessa kept her composure. "Please move aside, Cody. You've had too much to drink." She tried to step around him, heading for the coffee machine, but Cody followed, his friends forming a loose circle around them. The live stream comments scrolled rapidly on their phones, encouraging the harassment. "Wait, wait!" Cody's face lit up with cruel inspiration. His hand shot out to the counter, grabbing a pair of scissors from the cup where they kept office supplies. "I know what this video needs. A makeover." Everything happened so fast. Tessa felt the sharp tug at the back of her head, heard the horrible snick of the scissors, and then watched in horror as a lock of her hair fell to the floor. The sound that escaped her throat was small and broken. "Oh my God, he did it!" One of Cody's friends wheezed through his laughter. "This is going viral. It's just a joke." They started chanting, phones still recording Tessa's shocked face. "It's just a joke!" The diner had gone completely silent except for their laughter and chanting. Mama Joe burst out of the kitchen, her face thunderous. "Get out! I'm calling the sheriff right now!" She reached for the phone behind the counter, but Cody's group was already backing towards the door, still filming, still laughing. "Thanks for the content, Sister Tessa," Cody called out as they fled into the night. Tessa stood frozen. One hand reached back to touch the spot where her hair had been cut. Her fingers trembled as they found the jagged edge. Someone tried to touch her arm. Mrs. Davidson, she thought. But she couldn't bear it. She turned and ran to the back room, barely making it through the door before the tears started. The storage room's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Tessa sank to the floor, her back against a shelf of canned goods. She could hear Mama Joe's voice in the diner, fierce and angry as she talked to the sheriff. Other voices murmured, probably customers discussing what they'd just witnessed. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. With shaking hands, she pulled it out to find messages from friends. "Are you okay? I just saw the video. It's already all over social media." Tessa let the phone drop to her lap as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She touched her hair again, feeling the missing piece, the violation of it sharp and real. The cross necklace that had drawn their mockery felt heavy now, a weight of faith being tested. Outside the storage room, she could hear the whispers starting. The town's gossip machine was already churning. "Did you see what happened? That Hayes boy has gone too far." Poor Tessa. But sitting there on the cold floor, surrounded by shelves of supplies and the distant sounds of sympathy she couldn't face yet, Tessa felt anything but poor. She felt small and hurt and humiliated. But somewhere beneath it all, there was something else. Something that would matter later, when the sting of this night had faded. For now, though, she let herself cry in the quiet of the storage room, mourning not just her hair, but the casual cruelty that had brought her to this moment. The diner's usual warm buzz had given way to a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional murmur and the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. In the aftermath of chaos, even time seemed to move differently, marking each second of this night that had changed everything. Sunday morning dawned with a heavy stillness over Joe's diner. The neon open sign flickered to life at 6 o'clock sharp, but the usual morning bustle felt subdued. Tessa's hands shook slightly as she tied her apron, trying to ignore the way her head felt lighter on one side. Regular customers trickled in, their eyes following her with a mix of sympathy and curiosity. Mrs. Davidson, settling into her usual spot at the counter, reached out to squeeze Tessa's hand. "We're all here for you, honey." The morning crawled by in whispers and sidelong glances. Around 10:30, the bell above the door chimed. Tessa's stomach clenched as Cody Hayes strolled in, phone already held high, live streaming his entrance. Two of his friends flanked him, snickering. "Look who's back at work!" Cody announced to his viewers. "Sister Tessa, serving up humility with those hash browns." In the corner booth, a man in a weathered baseball cap looked up from his coffee. His face was partially hidden by the brim, but his shoulders tensed at Cody's words. Tessa kept her eyes down, focusing on wiping the already clean counter. Her hands trembled more noticeably now, rattling the silverware she was trying to sort. "Oh, look at those shaky hands." Cody zoomed in with his phone. "Careful now, wouldn't want to drop anything. Maybe we should give you another haircut to match the first one. You know, for symmetry." The man in the corner booth stood up slowly. His voice cut through the diner's tense atmosphere like a knife through butter. "That's my wife." The room fell silent. Even the sizzle of the grill seemed to quiet down. Cody turned, his phone still recording, and let out a laugh that held more bravado than humor. "Yeah, right, old man. And I'm the king of—" The words died in his throat as the stranger reached up and removed his cap. Gasps rippled through the diner. Everyone in town knew that face from the news, from magazines, from countless charitable foundation announcements. Elliot Graham, the reclusive billionaire philanthropist who'd made headlines with his innovative tech companies and generous giving. Tessa stared, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected him back for another week. The sight of him now, standing tall in his simple flannel shirt and worn jeans, made her throat tight with emotion. Elliot's eyes never left Cody's face as he shrugged off his jacket. He crossed the diner in measured steps, the leather of his boots quiet against the linoleum floor. With gentle hands, he draped the jacket around Tessa's shoulders. The familiar scent of his cologne wrapped around her like a shield. Cody's phone wavered, then steadied as he realized what he was capturing. The live stream count exploded, numbers climbing by the thousands as viewers shared the feed. Within minutes, over 2 million people were watching. Elliot turned to face the camera directly. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of steel. "You humiliated the kindest woman I've ever known." He paused, letting the words sink in. "A woman who has never shown anything but grace to everyone who walks through these doors, including you." The silence in the diner was absolute. Even Cody's friends had backed away, leaving him alone in the spotlight of his own making. His phone trembled slightly in his grip. Elliot placed his hand gently on the small of Tessa's back. "Let's go home, sweetheart." As they walked toward the door, the first camera flashes started. News traveled fast in small towns, and faster still on social media. Through the diner's windows, they could see cars pulling up, reporters already gathering with microphones and cameras at the ready. The door chimed one final time as they stepped out into the morning sunshine, leaving behind a diner full of stunned faces and one very pale young man, still holding his phone as his live stream counter ticked ever higher. The video spread like wildfire across social media platforms. By sunset, clips of Elliot Graham defending Tessa had been shared millions of times. Hashtags trended: Shadina Defender, Billionaire Wife, and sadly, some cruel ones too. The quiet sanctuary of their lakeside mansion felt worlds away from the chaos unfolding online. Tessa sat in the window seat of their living room, watching the sun paint golden streaks across Lake Lanier. Her phone buzzed constantly until she finally turned it off. The notifications had become too much. Strangers dissecting her life, her marriage, her worth. "Look at her clothes in that video," one comment read. "Total gold digger. Probably planned the whole thing." "An angel of grace," another argued. "That's what real faith looks like." Outside Joe's diner, news vans lined the street like vultures. Reporters clutched microphones and coffees, waiting for any scrap of information. Through the window, Tessa could see Mama Joe moving about inside, her familiar figure a comfort even from afar. Inside the diner, Mama Joe pulled the blinds down tight and flipped the closed sign. She gathered the regular morning customers, those who'd snuck in through the back door, into a circle. "Lord," she prayed, her voice steady and strong, "grant us peace in this storm. Protect Tessa's gentle heart from those who'd tear it down. And thank you for sending Elliot to stand up for what's right." Back at the mansion, Elliot guided Tessa to their oversized kitchen. "You need to rest," he insisted, pulling out a chair at the marble island. "Let me make you some tea." Tessa watched him move around the kitchen. This powerful man who could command boardrooms, now carefully measuring out chamomile leaves. His sleeves were rolled up, showing strong forearms marked with a few scars from his early days of building computers in his garage. Before the billions, before the empire, back when he was just Eli. "Everyone's talking," she whispered, her voice catching. "They're saying such horrible things." Elliot set the steaming mug in front of her, his hands covering hers. "Let the world talk," he said firmly. "I only care what God knows, and He knows your heart, Tessa. That's all that matters." The kitchen's warm lights cast a gentle glow as they prepared a simple dinner together. Elliot insisted on cooking, something he rarely had time for anymore. He made his mother's chicken soup recipe, the one that had sustained him through late nights coding his first successful program. But every few minutes, his phone would light up with another call. The same names kept flashing: board members, PR team, legal department. Each time, Elliot's jaw tightened a little more. Finally, during their quiet dinner, one call came through that made him pause. "I should take this," he said apologetically. "It's Marcus, head of the board." Tessa nodded, stirring her soup without eating it. Even through the kitchen's thick walls, she could hear snippets of the conversation. Public relations nightmare. Stock dropping. Need to consider the company's image. Distance yourself from the situation. When Elliot returned, his face was drawn. Without a word, he turned his phone off completely and dropped it in a drawer. But Tessa saw the worry flickering in his eyes. The same look he'd had during the company's early struggles. "They're worried about the scandal," she said softly. It wasn't a question. "They're worried about money," Elliot corrected, his voice gentle but firm. "But I didn't build this company by letting others dictate my conscience." Later that night, Tessa stood in their master bathroom, facing the large mirror. The bright lights were unforgiving, highlighting every detail she tried to ignore during the day. Her hair hung unevenly, the crude cut from Cody's scissors impossible to hide. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, making them look hollow in her reflection. Tears welled up as she touched the shortened strands. "How can I face anyone again?" she whispered to her reflection. The woman staring back looked lost, diminished somehow. Elliot appeared in the doorway, his presence solid and sure. He stepped behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Together," he replied softly, wrapping his arms around her waist. "We'll face it together." She leaned back against his chest, letting his strength support her. In the mirror, they made an unlikely pair, the billionaire tech genius and the small-town waitress. But God had written their love story, and Tessa knew his endings were always better than the world's expectations. "I keep thinking about Mama Jo," Tessa said quietly. "All those reporters outside the diner. It's hurting her business too." "Mama Jo's tough," Elliot reminded her. "Remember when that developer tried to buy her out last year? She told him she'd rather serve burnt coffee than sell her soul." That drew a small smile from Tessa. She said his fancy suit couldn't hide his poor manners. And she was right. Elliot kissed the top of her head. "Just like she was right about us, remember? When everyone else was gossiping about why a billionaire was eating at a small-town diner 3 times a week, she just smiled and said, 'The Lord works in mysterious ways.'" Tessa touched her cross necklace, the one her mother had given her, the same one Cody and his friends had mocked. "I've been trying to pray," she admitted, "but the words won't come." "Then I'll pray for both of us," Elliot said. He turned her gently to face him, his hands warm on her shoulders. "God didn't bring us together to let us fall apart now. Whatever those board members say, whatever the internet thinks, we're stronger than this." A car door slammed outside, followed by the distinct sound of cameras clicking. Another news crew, probably. Their lakeside property was becoming as besieged as the diner. Tessa closed her eyes. "I never wanted this kind of attention. I never wanted to cause trouble for your company." "Hey," Elliot's voice was firm. "Look at me." She opened her eyes, finding his steady gaze. "You didn't cause anything. Those boys did. And if standing up for my wife costs me every penny I've earned, I'll consider it money well spent." His phone buzzed again in the kitchen drawer, muffled but insistent. They both knew it wouldn't stop. The board would keep calling. The reporters would keep waiting. The social media storm would keep raging. But for now, in the quiet of their bathroom, with the lake waters lapping at the shore outside, they held onto each other. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight they had this moment, this peace in the midst of chaos. Monday morning dawned with a harsh glare that seemed to mirror the media's spotlight. Tessa sat in her bathrobe, watching a morning talk show host gesture dramatically at her photo on the enormous screen behind him. "From serving coffee to serving looks at charity galas," the host smirked. "Our next story is about the waitress who definitely married up. Some are calling it a real-life Cinderella story, but others wonder, what's the real reason billionaire Elliot Graham kept this marriage under wraps?" Tessa's hand trembled as she muted the television. Her phone buzzed with another text from Mama Jo. "Stay home, baby girl. It's like a circus out here. Sheriff's trying to keep them back, but these vultures don't listen." Through the window, Tessa could see at least 3 news vans parked at the end of their private drive. Their satellite dishes reached toward the sky like metal flowers hunting for sunshine, or in this case, scandal. Her phone rang. It was Elliot. "Sweetheart." His voice was strained. "The Singapore deal fell through. They're concerned about stability." Tessa's heart sank. That deal had been in the works for months. "Because of me?" "No," Elliot said firmly. "Because people are small-minded. Listen, I've arranged for extra security. Please don't go anywhere without Thompson or Rivers. The media's getting aggressive." She looked down at her empty coffee cup. They needed groceries. The thought of being trapped in this beautiful house, hiding like she'd done something wrong, made her chest tight. "I love you," Elliot said softly. "I'll be home early." After hanging up, Tessa walked to their bedroom. She stared at her closet, filled now with designer clothes Elliot had bought her, though she still preferred her simple dresses. With determined movements, she pulled on a comfortable outfit and tied a headscarf carefully over her uneven hair. The back gate had a service road that led to town. The reporters wouldn't expect her to walk, and right now, she needed to feel normal, to do something as simple as buying groceries. The Georgia heat wrapped around her like a heavy blanket as she walked the mile into town. A few cars passed, but no one seemed to recognize her. The normalcy felt like a gift. That illusion shattered when she reached Miller's grocery. Two women stood near the tomato display, their voices carrying clearly. "I heard she trapped him," one said, squeezing avocados too hard. "These rich men, they think with their—" "Shh," the other cut in. "But I know what you mean. My cousin works at that diner, says she was always extra friendly when he came in. Probably planned the whole thing." Tessa's hands shook as she picked up a basket. She forced herself to walk past them, keeping her head down. And now look, his company's losing deals. But she got what she wanted, didn't she? That big house, all that money. The fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright, the store too small. Tessa abandoned her basket and walked out, her steps quickening until she was almost running. Back at home, voices drifted from Elliot's study. She recognized Marcus Chen, the head of the board, and Patricia Wells, their PR director. "The optics are killing us, Elliot," Patricia was saying. "We need to control the narrative. A temporary separation. Absolutely not!" Elliot's voice was steel. "Just for appearance's sake," Marcus added smoothly. 6 months. Let things cool down. We'll spin it as a trial period. Very amicable. The stock's down 15%. Investors are nervous." Tessa pressed her hand against the wall, feeling like she couldn't breathe. Through the crack in the door, she could see Elliot pacing. "My marriage isn't a PR strategy," he growled. "Your marriage is affecting thousands of employees." Marcus countered. "Their jobs, their security, all because you won't consider a simple solution. No one's saying forever, just until what?" Tessa pushed the door open, making them all jump. "Until I'm less embarrassing, less black, less poor." "Mrs. Graham." Patricia stood smoothly. "We're simply trying to protect everyone's interests." "No." Tessa's voice shook but held firm. "You're trying to hide me, like I'm something shameful." Elliot started toward her, but she held up her hand. "I heard them in town today, saying I trapped you, saying I planned this, and now your own board wants you to pretend we're separated?" "Tessa," Elliot began, "if you're going to fight for me," she said, meeting his eyes, "do it in the open. I won't hide anymore. I won't let them make me ashamed of our love." Patricia cleared her throat. "Mrs. Graham, you have to understand. No, you need to understand." Tessa turned to face them fully. "God brought us together, and if that's too complicated for your PR strategy, then maybe you need a new one." Marcus opened his mouth, but Elliot cut him off. "She's right. Meeting's over. Show yourselves out." After they left, Elliot pulled Tessa close. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I never wanted you to hear that." "Then we face them together," Tessa said firmly. "No more hiding, no more shame." They stood by their window as evening settled over the lake. Camera lights flickered through the trees like fireflies, but they seemed less threatening now. Elliot's hand was warm in hers, his wedding ring catching the last rays of sunset. Together, he agreed, squeezing her hand. Outside, another news van pulled up, its satellite dish reaching skyward. But inside, in the quiet of their home, Tessa felt stronger than she had all day. Let them watch. Let them talk. Love like theirs was built on something deeper than public opinion. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the marble steps of Graham Enterprises' headquarters as reporters jostled for position. Camera crews adjusted their equipment, while journalists checked their microphones. The air buzzed with anticipation. Inside, Tessa stood before a mirror in Elliot's office, smoothing her navy dress. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her headscarf, carefully arranged to cover the uneven patches of her hair. "You don't have to do this," Elliot said softly, coming up behind her. "Yes, I do." Tessa met his eyes in the reflection. "We do." He squeezed her shoulders gently. "I love you. I love you too." She turned to face him. "Will you hold my hand out there?" Every step of the way. The elevator ride down felt endless. Through the glass walls, Tessa could see the crowd growing larger. Her heart thundered in her chest, but she kept her chin up. Elliot's hand was warm and steady in hers. The doors opened to a wave of camera flashes. Reporters shouted questions, their voices blending into a roar. Elliot guided her to the podium, where microphones clustered like metal flowers. "Good morning." Elliot's voice carried clear and strong across the crowd. "I've called this press conference to address the speculation surrounding my marriage to Tessa Brown Graham." More cameras flashed. Tessa blinked against the light but didn't look away. 2 years ago, I walked into a small diner in Georgia. I was grieving, lost, questioning everything I believed in. But there I met a woman whose kindness and faith reminded me what truly matters in this world. He turned to smile at Tessa. We married 6 months later, quietly, as was our choice. We wanted privacy, normalcy, a chance to build our life together without scrutiny. A reporter called out, "Why keep it secret? Were you ashamed?" "No." Elliot's voice hardened. "We kept it private because love isn't a spectacle, but recent events have forced our hand." He paused, his jaw tightening. My wife was publicly humiliated by someone who thought cruelty was entertainment. The video went viral, and instead of supporting her, many chose to question her character, her motives, her worth. He straightened his shoulders. "Let me be clear. My fortune didn't make me rich. Her courage did. Her faith, her grace under fire, her ability to face hatred with love. These are the true measures of wealth. And I stand here today, proud to be her husband." Tessa felt tears threatening, but held them back. Another reporter raised her hand. "Mrs. Graham, how do you respond to accusations that you married for money?" Elliot started to speak, but Tessa stepped forward. "I married for love," she said simply. "God brought us together when we both needed healing. The size of Elliot's bank account doesn't change the size of his heart." Questions erupted again, but Elliot raised his hand for silence. "That's all for today. Thank you." As they walked back inside, Tessa could hear the reporters still calling after them. But something had shifted. She felt lighter, stronger. The next week brought a flood of messages. Hate mail poured in, filled with ugly words and uglier threats. But alongside them came something unexpected. Thousands of letters from women sharing their own stories. Tessa sat at their kitchen table late into the night, reading each one. They wrote about workplace harassment, about racism, about being mocked and belittled. But they also wrote about survival, about faith, about finding strength in community. "Dear Mrs. Graham," one letter began. "When I saw how you held your head high after what that boy did, it gave me courage. I've been hiding my natural hair under wigs for years because my co-workers made fun of it. Today, I wore it proud." Another wrote, My daughter was bullied at school. The video went viral. She wanted to disappear. But then we saw you at that press conference, standing tall. She said, "Mama, if Mrs. Graham can be brave, so can I." One night, around midnight, Elliot found Tessa surrounded by letters, tears streaming down her face as she read aloud. "I thought I was alone. I thought no one would understand. But seeing your story, knowing someone else has felt this pain and chosen love over bitterness, it changed something in me." Elliot knelt beside her chair. "You okay?" "They need to know they're not alone," Tessa whispered, touching the letters gently. "So many women, so much pain, but so much hope too." He kissed her forehead softly. "Then let's help them heal." Tessa looked up, her eyes bright. "What do you mean? We could start a foundation, create safe spaces for women who've faced discrimination, provide resources, support, legal aid if needed, whatever it takes to turn this pain into purpose." "Yes," Tessa nodded eagerly. "But first," she took a deep breath, "I need to go back to the diner." "Are you sure? I can't help others face their fears if I'm still running from mine." She squared her shoulders. "It's time." The letters continued arriving daily, each one a testament to shared struggle and resilience. Tessa responded to as many as she could, offering words of encouragement, sharing her own journey toward forgiveness and healing. With each response, she felt her own strength growing. They began making plans for the foundation, but Tessa insisted that before they moved forward, she needed to reclaim her space at Joe's diner. The place where their story began, where both trauma and love had found her, was waiting, and this time she wouldn't face it alone. The morning sun cast long shadows across Joe's diner's parking lot as Tessa stood before its familiar entrance, her fingers intertwined tightly with Elliot's. The neon sign buzzed softly overhead, a sound that had once been as natural as breathing, but now seemed to echo her racing heartbeat. "You ready?" Elliot squeezed her hand gently. Tessa took a deep breath, smoothing her carefully pressed dress. She'd chosen it deliberately that morning, a deep purple that reminded her of the sunset, paired with a delicate silver necklace bearing a cross. Her hair was styled naturally, no attempt to hide the uneven spots where Cody's scissors had struck. "Ready as I'll ever be," she whispered, more to herself than to Elliot. The bell above the door chimed as they entered, its cheerful ring cutting through the murmur of conversation. The diner fell silent. Tessa felt every eye turn toward them, some customers quickly looking away, others staring openly. The place was only half full, several regular morning customers noticeably absent. But then there was Mama Joe, emerging from behind the counter like a force of nature, her arms already opening wide. "Baby girl!" she called out, her voice thick with emotion. "Welcome home." Tessa fell into the older woman's embrace, breathing in the familiar scent of coffee and vanilla that always clung to Mama Joe's apron. "I missed you," she whispered. "Ain't been the same without you." Mama Joe pulled back, holding Tessa at arm's length to study her face. "You look stronger." "Getting there." Tessa managed a small smile. Elliot stood respectfully to the side, watching the reunion with warm eyes. When Mama Joe finally released Tessa, she turned to him with a knowing look. "And you, Mr. Graham? About time you stopped hiding in that corner booth of yours." A few chuckles rippled through the diner, breaking some of the tension. Elliot grinned. "Yes, Ma'am. Though I have to say it was a pretty good vantage point for admiring your best waitress." More laughter now, genuine and warm. Tessa felt her shoulders begin to relax slightly. Then she saw it, the counter where it had happened. The same polished surface where Cody had cornered her, where the scissors had flashed in the fluorescent light. Her steps faltered for a moment. Elliot's hand found the small of her back, steady and reassuring. "Together," he murmured. Tessa nodded and walked forward, each step deliberate. She chose the same stool where she'd been standing that night, pulling herself up with practiced ease despite her trembling hands. Elliot settled beside her, his presence a shield between her and the rest of the world. "2 coffees, Mama Joe," he called out, then turned to Tessa with a playful wink. "Unless you've suddenly developed a taste for those fancy lattes I keep trying to tempt you with." Tessa felt a genuine smile tugging at her lips. "You know better than that. Nothing beats Mama Joe's coffee." "Girl speaks truth," Mama Joe declared, sliding 2 steaming mugs in front of them. "Some things don't need improving." Outside, a small crowd of reporters had gathered, their cameras pointed through the windows. Tessa could see their lenses glinting in the morning light, hungry for drama, waiting for her to break down or run away. Instead, she straightened her spine and turned deliberately toward them. "You can film kindness too," she called out clearly, her voice carrying through the glass. The diner erupted in cheers and applause, startling her. She looked around to see people standing, clapping, regulars who'd watched her work for years, newcomers who'd only known her. Through viral videos, all united in this moment of support. Mrs. Patterson, a retired school teacher who'd been coming in for breakfast every morning for 15 years, made her way over. "We missed your smile, dear," she said softly, patting Tessa's hand. "This place needs your light." One by one, other customers came forward, some just nodding respectfully, others offering words of encouragement or apology for not speaking up that night. Each interaction helped rebuild something that had been shattered, replacing fear with hope, shame with dignity. The morning passed in a blur of coffee refills and quiet conversations. Tessa didn't try to work. This wasn't about returning to her job just yet. This was about reclaiming her space, her identity, her right to exist without fear. Later that evening, back in their home, Tessa and Elliot sat at their dining room table. The remains of a simple dinner, grilled chicken and vegetables, sat forgotten as Elliot spread out several papers between them. "I've been thinking," he began, pulling out a legal pad covered in his neat handwriting, "about all those letters you've been answering, all the women reaching out." Tessa leaned forward, interested. "What do you have in mind?" "The Tessa Brown Trust," he said, watching her face carefully. "A scholarship fund for women rebuilding their lives after trauma. Not just educational scholarships, but grants for therapy, legal aid, career training, whatever they need to move forward." Tessa traced her fingers over the proposed name. "You'd use my name?" "Your story inspired them," Elliot said softly. "Your grace in the face of cruelty, your strength in choosing forgiveness. That's what touched people's hearts." She was quiet for a long moment, considering. "I'll agree on one condition," she finally said. "It has to help people find hope, not pity. We're not just giving handouts. We're investing in their futures, believing in their potential." Elliot smiled, reaching across the table to take her hand. "That's exactly what I was thinking. Every woman who receives help from the Trust will be encouraged to mentor others when they're ready. Creating a chain of support, strength building upon strength. Like ripples in a pond." Tessa nodded, warming to the idea. Each person touching the next, spreading hope outward. They spent the next hour discussing details, application processes, funding structures, partnership opportunities with other organizations. As the sky darkened outside their windows, Tessa felt a deep sense of purpose settling over her. Finally, Elliot set down his pen. "Shall we pray about it?" "Yes," Tessa said immediately. They joined hands across the table, bowing their heads. "Dear Lord," Tessa began softly, Grant us wisdom as we move forward. Help us turn pain into purpose, hatred into healing. Show us how to be your hands and feet in this broken world. Guide our steps," Elliot continued, "that we might help others find the strength you've given us. Let this trust be a light in the darkness, a refuge for those who need it most." "And Lord," Tessa added, her voice growing stronger, "thank you for bringing beauty from ashes, for showing us that love is stronger than hate, that hope can bloom even in the hardest places. Amen." They whispered together, their joined hands a bridge between past and future, between trauma and healing, between despair and hope. The late summer breeze carried hope across Georgia like dandelion seeds, scattering possibilities far and wide. Within 3 weeks of launching the Tessa Brown Trust, donations began flowing in from unexpected places. Church groups in Minnesota, school children in Oregon, business leaders in Texas. Each contribution came with notes of encouragement, many sharing their own stories of transformation. Tessa sat at her desk in their home office, surrounded by stacks of letters. Her fingers traced over a child's crayon drawing that showed stick figures holding hands in a circle. The note attached read, "Dear Mrs. Brown, my class raised $235 from our lemonade stand. We want to help other people be brave like you." Elliot found her there, wiping tears from her cheeks. "Another touching one?" he asked softly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "They're all touching," she replied, holding up the drawing. "This is from a third-grade class in Portland. They spent their whole weekend selling lemonade." She swallowed hard. How did this happen, Eli? How did something so ugly turn into something so beautiful? He pulled up a chair beside her, taking her hand. "Because you chose love over bitterness. God has a way of multiplying grace." The invitations had started coming in steadily, first from local churches, then from congregations across the state, and finally from organizations nationwide. Tessa spoke about resilience, about finding strength in faith, about choosing forgiveness over revenge. Her quiet dignity and genuine warmth touched hearts wherever she went. At Friendship Baptist Church in Atlanta, she stood before a packed sanctuary, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I used to think shame was something you carried forever," she told the congregation. "But God showed me that even our deepest wounds can become windows for His light to shine through." The response was overwhelming. Women lined up afterward to hug her, many crying as they shared their own stories of humiliation and healing. One elderly lady gripped her hands tightly and whispered, "You've given me permission to stop hiding." Schools began using her story in their anti-bullying programs. The Georgia State Board of Education invited her to help develop a curriculum about digital citizenship and empathy. Teenage girls wrote essays about her for their college applications, calling her their role model. The transformation wasn't just external. Elliot had changed too, softening in ways that made Tessa's heart swell. After years of sporadic attendance, he returned to church regularly, sitting beside her in the pew every Sunday morning. His smile came more easily now, reaching his eyes in a way it hadn't since his first wife's death. One Sunday after service, as they walked hand in hand through the parking lot, he confessed, "I'd forgotten how much I needed this. The community, the worship, the reminder that we're part of something bigger than ourselves." "You're different," Tessa observed, squeezing his hand. "Lighter somehow." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "I spent so many years focusing on building my empire, I forgot about building my spirit. You helped me remember what matters most." But not everything was peaceful. The media remained relentless, camping outside their home, following them to church, scrutinizing their every move. Some outlets tried to dig up dirt from Tessa's past, while others spun conspiracy theories about their marriage. The pressure intensified when several major investors threatened to pull out of Elliot's companies. His phone buzzed constantly with urgent messages from board members and executives, all demanding his immediate attention. Late one night, after another tense conference call, Tessa found him in his study, looking exhausted. "Maybe it's time to step back," she suggested gently. "Just temporarily. Focus on what feeds your soul instead of what feeds the bottom line." Elliot looked up at her, conflict clear in his eyes. The board would see it as weakness. "Since when do you let them define strength?" She challenged softly. "You've built something amazing, but maybe God is calling you to build something different now." He was quiet for a long moment, then smiled slowly. "When did you get so wise?" "I married a smart man," she teased. "Some of it was bound to rub off." The next morning, Elliot called an emergency board meeting. Standing before the group of stern-faced executives, he announced his decision to take a temporary leave of absence. "I need to focus on family and faith right now," he said firmly. "The company will survive without me for a while." To celebrate their decision, they planned a quiet dinner by the lake. Tessa prepared Elliot's favorite meal, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, while he set up a table on their private dock. The setting sun painted the water in shades of gold and pink, and candles flickered in mason jars. As they ate, they talked about their dreams for the foundation, about the lives they hoped to touch, about the way God had used their pain to create purpose. The stars began appearing one by one, reflecting in the calm water below. "Look at that sky," Tessa breathed, leaning back in her chair. "So vast, so peaceful. Makes you realize how small our troubles really are." Elliot reached across the table, taking her hand. "You know what I've realized. If our love could survive public humiliation, mockery, threats, maybe it was always meant to be something more than just human love. Maybe it was divine all along." "You're right," she said softly. "God knew what he was doing when he brought us together. Even through all this chaos, I've never felt safer than I do with you." "You're my miracle," Elliot whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "When Sarah died, I thought I'd never find joy again. But you brought light back into my world." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars multiply above them, feeling completely at peace. The water lapped gently against the dock pilings, crickets chirped in the distance, and God's presence felt as tangible as the warm summer air around them. Little did they know that across town, tomorrow's newspapers were already rolling off the presses, their headlines poised to shatter this perfect moment of tranquility. The morning sun had barely touched the horizon when Elliot's phone started buzzing incessantly. Tessa stirred beside him, her peaceful sleep interrupted by the electronic intrusion. Elliot reached for his phone, squinting at the screen. His face went pale. "What is it?" Tessa asked, sitting up in their bed. "We're trending again," he said quietly, his voice tight. "But this time, it's bad." Tessa leaned over to look at his screen. Her stomach dropped as she read the headlines. "Waitress's shaving scandal was staged." The words seemed to pulse on the screen, each letter a fresh wound to her heart. "That's impossible," she whispered, but her hands were already shaking. Elliot scrolled through the news feeds, his jaw clenching tighter with each swipe. Cody's legal team released a statement. "They're claiming you orchestrated the whole thing, that you planned it to gain fame and trap me into marriage." "But we were already married," Tessa protested, her voice breaking. "How could I have planned?" Her words trailed off, as Elliot showed her more. Someone had dug up photos from her nursing school days. Innocent pictures of her laughing with classmates, studying in the library, celebrating at graduation parties. But the captions twisted everything. "Secret party girl past revealed." The real Tessa Brown before she found her billionaire. Tears welled in Tessa's eyes. Those had been such happy moments before her mother got sick, before she had to leave school to care for her. Now they were being used as weapons against her. The sound of car engines and voices drew them to their bedroom window. A crowd of reporters had already gathered at their gates, cameras flashing like lightning in the early morning light. How did they get here so fast? Tessa wondered aloud, pulling the curtains closed. Before Elliot could answer, his phone rang. It was Mama Jo, her usually strong voice broken by sobs. "They vandalized my diner," she cried. "Overnight, they broke windows, spray-painted horrible things. Such ugly words, such hatred." Tessa's knees gave out, and she sank onto the edge of the bed. "Oh, Mama Jo, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." "Don't you dare take blame for other people's evil," Mama Jo said firmly, despite her tears. "We'll clean it up. We'll paint over their hate. But child, you stay strong. You hear me?" Elliot took the phone. "We'll pay for everything, Mama Jo, and we'll increase security at the diner, I promise." After hanging up, Elliot immediately began making calls to his lawyers, to security teams, to crisis managers. His face grew more strained with each conversation. Tessa watched him pace, her heart aching as she saw the toll it was taking on him. During a video call with his board members, something changed in Elliot's face. He stumbled, his words slurring slightly. "Eli?" Tessa called out, rising from her chair. He tried to wave her off, but his hand moved strangely through the air. Then his eyes rolled back, and he crumpled to the floor. "Elliot!" Tessa screamed, rushing to his side. The board members' voices called out from the fallen phone, but she ignored them, frantically checking his pulse. It was there, but irregular. The next hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, emergency room lights, and doctors' voices. They spoke of exhaustion, of dangerous heart strain, of the need for rest and monitoring. Tessa barely heard them. All she could focus on was Elliot's pale face against the stark white hospital pillows, the steady beep of monitors the only assurance that he was still with her. When they were finally alone in his private room, Tessa pulled her chair as close to his bed as possible. She took his hand, noting how strange it felt to have his strong fingers lie limp in hers. "Please," she whispered, her tears falling onto their joined hands. "Please, not him too. I already lost Mama to illness. I can't lose you too, Eli, I can't." She bowed her head, her prayers becoming more urgent. "Lord, I know you have a plan. I know you see us through every storm, but please, give me strength. Show me how to fix this." Through the window, she could see reporters gathering outside the hospital. News of Elliot's collapse had spread quickly. Some were already speculating that guilt had caused his condition, guilt over being caught in a scandal. As she watched Elliot's chest rise and fall with each breath, something settled in her heart, a determination that went beyond anger or fear. She would clear their names, but not through rage or retaliation. The truth would be their weapon, pure, simple, and undeniable. "I won't let them win," she promised Elliot's sleeping form. "I won't let them turn our love into something ugly. We'll show them what real faith looks like, what real love can endure." She squeezed his hand gently, then reached for her phone. It was time to tell their story. The whole story, not through press releases or carefully crafted statements, but through simple, honest truth. Starting with the fact that they'd been married months before the incident, that their love had grown quietly over coffee and conversation, that God had brought them together, long before any cameras started rolling. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside her, its rhythm a reminder that every beat was precious, every moment a gift. Outside, the world might rage and roar with accusations, but in this room, watching over her husband, Tessa found her center, her purpose, her path forward. "The truth will set us free," she whispered, remembering her grandmother's favorite Bible verse. "And this time, we'll make sure everyone hears it." The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors and Elliot's even breathing. Sunlight filtered through the half-drawn blinds, casting warm stripes across his bed. Tessa sat in her usual chair, her Bible open in her lap, though her eyes kept drifting to her husband's face. 3 days had passed since his collapse. The doctors spoke of stress-induced exhaustion and warned about the dangers of continued strain on his heart. But this morning there was more color in his cheeks, and his hand felt stronger when he squeezed hers. "We should leave town for a while," Elliot suggested weakly, his voice still rough from sleep. "Maybe go to our lake house in Maine until this blows over." Tessa closed her Bible and leaned forward. "No, Eli, we're not running." "It's not running," he protested. "It's protecting you, protecting us." "Running won't protect our truth," she said firmly. "I've been thinking and praying about this. We need to fight back, but with grace and honesty." Elliot tried to sit up, and Tessa quickly adjusted his pillows. "What are you suggesting?" "I want to file a defamation suit," she said, "against Cody, his friends, and anyone who spread these lies about us staging the incident. I'll testify in court. Let them see me under oath, speaking God's truth." Elliot studied her face. "Are you sure? The media attention will be intense." "I'm sure." She took his hand. "When I was caring for Mama during her illness, she taught me something important. She said, 'Baby, sometimes God gives us battles not just for our own growth, but so others can see His light shine through us.'" Later that afternoon, their lawyers arrived. As they discussed the lawsuit, Tessa felt a familiar tugging in her spirit. It had been too long since she'd attended her old church, the one she'd stopped going to out of shame after the incident. The next Sunday morning, Tessa stood before the familiar red brick building, her heart pounding. Elliot, finally released from the hospital but still moving carefully, stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. "We don't have to do this today," he whispered. "Yes, we do," she replied. They walked in just as the first hymn began. Heads turned, whispers rippled, but then something beautiful happened. The elderly choir director smiled and waved. A deaconess hurried over to hug Tessa. Church members they'd never met reached out to squeeze their hands, murmuring words of encouragement. During the service, Pastor Matthews spoke about perseverance through trials. Then, unexpectedly, he called Tessa to come forward. Her legs felt like jelly as she walked to the pulpit. The faces before her blurred with her tears, but she felt God's presence wrap around her like a warm blanket. "When they shaved my head," she began, her voice trembling but growing stronger. "They didn't take my crown." She touched her hair, now growing back unevenly. "Because my crown isn't made of hair or gold or earthly riches. It's made of faith, hope, and love." The congregation rose to their feet, applause thundering through the sanctuary. In the front row, Mama Jo wept openly, her hands raised in praise. Elliot's eyes shone with pride and tears. The next morning, Elliot insisted on taking Tessa for a drive, despite his doctor's orders to rest. They pulled up in front of Joe's diner, but instead of stopping there, he pointed to a vacant building across the street. "Remember how we talked about the Tessa Brown Trust opening medical clinics?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "Well, this is the paperwork for our first location." Tessa's hands shook as she opened the folder. "Right here, on Main Street, right across from Mama Jo's," he confirmed. "We'll provide free medical care to anyone who needs it. And," he smiled, "we'll serve Mama Jo's coffee in the waiting room." Joy bubbled up in Tessa's chest, cautious but real. She looked at the building, already imagining the lives that could be changed within its walls. That evening, they visited the hospital chapel together. The setting sun painted the stained glass windows in deep purples and golds, casting colorful shadows across their joined hands. "Thank you, Lord," Tessa whispered, her head bowed, "for turning our pain into purpose, for giving us each other." Elliot added softly. They sat in peaceful silence, the chapel's quiet broken only by distant hospital sounds and their synchronous breathing. The lawsuit ahead would be challenging, the media circus would continue, but in this moment, beneath the rainbow light of stained glass, they found their strength renewed. Mama Joe's words from earlier that day echoed in Tessa's mind. When God builds something beautiful, He often starts with broken pieces. Looking at their clasped hands, at Elliot's peaceful face, at the papers for the clinic tucked safely in her purse, Tessa understood exactly what that meant. The morning sun filtered through the courthouse's towering windows, casting long shadows across the polished wooden benches. Every seat in the gallery was taken, with reporters and spectators packed shoulder to shoulder. The air felt thick with tension and the soft clicks of camera shutters. Tessa sat beside her lawyer, her hands folded quietly in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress, her natural hair now grown out enough to frame her face in soft curls. Elliot sat directly behind her, his presence steady and reassuring. On the defense bench, Cody Hayes lounged with an air of casual arrogance, whispering and smirking with his expensive legal team. His friends, who had helped film the incident, fidgeted nervously in the gallery, their previous bravado diminished by the formal setting. Judge Marlene Baxter called the court to order, her gavel crack echoing through the hushed room. "Case number 2734, Brown versus Hayes. Ms. Brown, please take the stand." Tessa rose slowly, smoothing her dress. As she walked to the witness stand, she felt hundreds of eyes following her every move. The bailiff held out the Bible, and she placed her hand upon it, her voice clear as she took the oath. "Please state your name for the record," the court reporter requested. "Tessa Marie Brown Graham." Her lawyer approached, giving her an encouraging nod. "Ms. Brown, please tell the court about the evening of April 15th. Tessa took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I was working my regular shift at Joe's Diner. It was busy, like most Saturday nights." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "Mr. Hayes and his friends came in around 7:30. They were filming on their phones, laughing." As she recounted the details, the courtroom grew still. She described the mocking comments, the way Cody had cornered her by the coffee machine, the cold metal of the scissors against her scalp. Throughout her testimony, she remained composed, though her voice occasionally trembled. "And how did this incident affect you?" her lawyer asked gently. "At first I felt broken," Tessa admitted, her eyes meeting Cody's for the first time. He shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "It wasn't just about my hair. It was about feeling powerless, about being turned into someone's joke for entertainment. I stopped going to church, stopped visiting friends. I felt ashamed just walking down the street." The prosecutor presented evidence, the viral video, screenshots of cruel comments, medical records showing Tessa's anxiety treatments. Through it all, she sat straight-backed, dignified. When Cody's lawyer cross-examined her, trying to suggest she had orchestrated the incident for fame, Tessa's response was steady. "Sir, I never wanted fame. I was happy being a waitress, caring for my mother, loving my husband. The only thing I ever staged in that diner was placing napkins and silverware on tables." A few people in the gallery chuckled softly, but quickly fell silent as Judge Baxter gave them a stern look. Finally, the judge leaned forward. "Ms. Brown, if the court finds in your favor, what justice do you seek?" The room held its breath. Tessa looked at Cody, really looked at him, seeing past his expensive suit to the uncertainty in his eyes. "Your Honor, I don't want Mr. Hayes to go to prison," she said clearly. Surprised murmurs filled the courtroom. Prison won't teach him what he needs to learn. Instead, I ask that he be required to serve community service hours at the Tessa Brown Trust's medical clinic. Cody's smirk faltered. His lawyers exchanged glances. I want him to meet the people who come to us, people who've been hurt, humiliated, made to feel worthless. I want him to see how cruelty can shatter someone's world. She paused, her voice softening. And maybe, just maybe, he'll learn how to help put those worlds back together. Judge Baxter removed her glasses, studying Tessa intently. You're asking for rehabilitation over punishment? Yes, Your Honor. Hatred only breeds more hatred, but maybe grace can breed healing. From his seat, Elliot wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, pride evident on his face. Even some of the reporters had stopped writing, caught up in the moment. Cody stared at Tessa, his usual confidence cracking. For the first time since the incident, he looked young and uncertain, like someone confronting the true weight of his actions. Judge Baxter nodded slowly, a hint of admiration in her expression. The court will take your request into consideration. We'll recess until 2 o'clock for my ruling. Her gavel fell, but the usual shuffling and chatter took several moments to begin. As Tessa stepped down from the witness stand, she felt lighter somehow. Across the aisle, she saw Mama Jo dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, beaming with maternal pride. Several members of her church had come to support her, their presence a reminder of the community that had helped her heal. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed and reporters called out questions. But Tessa walked past them with her head high, Elliot's arm protective around her shoulders. She had spoken her truth, offered grace instead of vengeance. Whatever the judge's decision, she knew she had stayed true to her faith and her heart. The world could buzz and speculate about her testimony, but Tessa felt at peace. In choosing mercy over retribution, she had finally freed herself from the last chains of that horrible night. The healing power of grace had transformed her from victim to advocate, from target to teacher. In the courthouse hallway, she overheard snippets of conversation, people marveling at her compassion. But it was the sight of Cody's friends, huddled in a corner looking shaken and thoughtful, that gave her hope. Perhaps her words had reached not just the court, but also the hearts that needed them most. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the half-finished clinic's parking lot as Cody Hayes trudged toward the entrance. His designer shoes, now scuffed from a week of manual labor, clicked against the concrete. Dark circles hung under his eyes, and his usually perfect hair was uncombed. The court-mandated vest he wore marked him clearly as someone doing community service. Inside, the clinic buzzed with quiet activity. Construction workers moved between rooms, hanging drywall and installing lighting fixtures. The smell of fresh paint and sawdust filled the air. Volunteers sorted medical supplies and arranged furniture in the completed sections. Cody checked in with the site supervisor, accepting his daily task list with barely concealed resentment. His first assignment, helping organize the waiting room furniture alongside 2 other volunteers, both survivors of workplace harassment who had found refuge in the Tessa Brown Trust's programs. "You're the one from the video, aren't you?" One of them asked quietly as they assembled chairs. Cody's face flushed red. He nodded stiffly, unable to meet their eyes. "I saw what you did to her," the other volunteer said, her voice trembling slightly. "I had something similar happen to me at my old job. They didn't use scissors, but the humiliation, it stays with you." Cody's hands froze on the chair he was holding. For the first time, he truly heard the pain in someone else's voice, pain he had caused. He swallowed hard, his throat suddenly tight. Throughout the morning, more stories reached his ears. a young woman who'd been cyberbullied until she attempted suicide, an elderly man who'd been mocked and filmed at his job, the video going viral and forcing him into early retirement. Each story chipped away at Cody's defensive wall. Around noon, Elliot Graham arrived for a routine inspection of the construction progress. He moved through the clinic quietly, speaking with workers and volunteers, his presence both commanding and humble. When he reached the waiting room, his eyes met Cody's. The young man tensed, expecting anger or contempt. Instead, Elliot approached him directly, extending his hand. "Thank you for showing up," Elliot said simply. "It matters." Cody stared at the offered hand, then slowly shook it. I don't have a choice," he mumbled. "There's always a choice," Elliot replied. "You could have fought the ruling, hired more lawyers, dragged this out. Instead, you're here, doing the work. That says something." The conversation was brief, but it left Cody shaken. He spent the afternoon helping install privacy screens in examination rooms, his mind churning with thoughts he'd been avoiding for weeks. From her office, Tessa occasionally glimpsed Cody working. She saw how he gradually began to engage with others, how his shoulders slowly relaxed from their defensive hunch. Each time she saw him, her heart twisted with complicated emotions, the memory of that horrible night at the diner warring with her deep-seated belief in redemption. As the day drew to a close, Cody found himself alone in the supply room, organizing medical supplies. The sound of footsteps made him turn. Tessa stood in the doorway, her presence both gentle and strong. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Cody's carefully maintained facade cracked. His shoulders slumped, and he stared at the floor. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he muttered, his voice thick with shame. "What I did, what I encouraged others to do, it was cruel, pointless. I can't take it back." Tessa stepped into the room, her response gentle but firm. "None of us do. That's why it's called grace." The simple truth of her words hung in, the air between them. Cody looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time since the trial. The kindness he saw there nearly undid him. "How?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How can you even look at me?" "Because holding on to hatred only hurts ourselves," Tessa replied. "And because I've seen you this week, really seen you. You're not the same person who walked into that diner with a camera and scissors." Cody wiped roughly at his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know it's not enough, but I am so sorry." Tessa nodded, accepting his words without demanding more. "Make it count," she said simply, then left him to finish his work. That evening, as Tessa and Elliot drove home together, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The half-built clinic stood as a testament to how far they'd come from that dark night at the diner. "I saw you talking to Cody today," Elliot said softly, taking her hand across the center console. Tessa squeezed his fingers. "If God could turn humiliation into healing, maybe there's hope for anyone," she replied, her voice full of wonder at the transformation she'd witnessed. Elliot brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "You've changed more lives than you'll ever know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Every person who walks through those clinic doors will find hope because you chose grace over vengeance." They drove home in comfortable silence, the weight of the day settling around them like a familiar blanket. Through the rearview mirror, Tessa could see the clinic growing smaller, but its impact on their lives and on Cody's would continue to ripple outward, touching countless others with the healing power of grace. In their driveway, before heading inside, Tessa paused to look at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. She thought about Cody's transformed face, about Elliot's quiet strength, about all the broken people finding healing in the clinic's halls. Sometimes, she realized, the deepest wounds could become the greatest sources of healing, not just for ourselves, but for others too. The Georgia summer softened into autumn, bringing with it gentle changes. At Tessa's vanity mirror one morning, she ran her fingers through her hair, now grown into a crown of soft, natural curls. The uneven patches from that terrible night had filled in, each new strand a testament to healing and time. She smiled at her reflection, remembering Mama Joe's words about how God makes everything beautiful in its season. The diner had undergone its own transformation. After weeks of renovation, Joe's diner gleamed with fresh paint and renewed purpose. The biggest change stood proudly on the building's exterior wall, a stunning mural that captured both Tessa and Mama Joe in vibrant colors. The artist had perfectly captured Mama Joe's warm smile and the gentle determination in Tessa's eyes. Above them, in elegant script, were the words, "Love rebuilds." On reopening day, the line stretched around the block. Mama Joe stood at the door, greeting each customer with her trademark hospitality. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," she kept saying, wiping happy tears from her eyes. "Look how he turned our pain into something beautiful." The diner's success felt like a prelude to an even greater celebration, the grand opening of the Tessa Brown Trust's first clinic. The morning of the ceremony, Tessa walked through the halls early, taking in the careful details. Bible verses about forgiveness and healing graced the walls in beautiful calligraphy. "Though your past be as scarlet, you shall be white as snow," read one. "Love covers all offenses," declared another. Children from the local church youth group darted through the corridors, their laughter echoing off the fresh paint. Some carried balloons, others helped arrange flowers. Their joy felt like a cleansing wind, washing away the last shadows of that dark night at the diner. "Miss Tessa," called out little Sarah, a 7-year-old with braids like sunshine. "Look what I made." She held up a handmade card covered in glitter and hearts. Inside, in careful child's writing, it read, "Thank you for showing us how to be brave." Tessa hugged the little girl close, her heart full. More children gathered around her, each wanting to share their artwork or help with the preparations. She let them lead her from room to room, showing off the colorful murals they'd helped paint in the pediatric wing. As the morning progressed, guests began arriving. Community leaders, donors, church members, and families filled the main atrium. Reporters set up their cameras, but this time their presence didn't make Tessa nervous. She'd learned to see them as witnesses to grace rather than hunters of scandal. Near the podium, Elliot adjusted his tie, looking handsome and proud. When their eyes met across the room, his smile carried all the love and admiration that had sustained them through the darkest days. He'd insisted on speaking at the ceremony, despite his usual preference for privacy. The crowd hushed as Elliot stepped up to the microphone. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, catching the silver at his temples. "Good morning," he began, his voice warm and steady. "We're here today not just to open a building, but to celebrate a miracle." He paused, his eyes finding Tessa in the crowd. "Many of you know our story, how cruelty tried to break the strongest woman I've ever known. But you may not know what happened after the cameras left, after the headlines faded. You may not know how my wife turned her pain into purpose." Tessa felt tears welling up as Elliot continued. "Every day I watched her answer hatred with love. I watched her respond to mockery with grace. When others demanded vengeance, she chose healing. Her scars built sanctuaries." The phrase hung in the air, powerful in its truth. Across the room, people dabbed at their eyes. Even the reporters looked moved. "This clinic," Elliot gestured to the space around them, "isn't just a building. It's a testament to the power of forgiveness. Every person who walks through these doors will find more than medical care. They'll find hope. They'll find proof that love rebuilds what hatred destroys. Near the back of the room, almost hidden in shadow, stood Cody. The months of community service had changed him profoundly. His hair was neatly trimmed, his clothes clean and pressed. Gone was the swaggering youth with a camera and cruel intentions. In his place stood a young man humbled by grace. As Elliot finished speaking, Tessa's gaze met Cody's across the crowded room. In that moment, something profound passed between them. Understanding, forgiveness, hope. She nodded slightly, a gesture of absolution that seemed to release the last bit of tension from his shoulders. Tears spilled down his cheeks as he nodded back. The rest of the day passed in a blur of ribbon-cutting, tours, and celebrations. As evening approached, most of the guests departed, leaving behind echoes of laughter and congratulations. The cleaning crew would come tomorrow. Tonight belonged to reflection and gratitude. Elliot found Tessa in her office, looking out the window at the setting sun. Without a word, he took her hand and led her to their special place, the lake behind their home. The water rippled with golden light, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of late summer flowers. "Dance with me?" he asked softly, pulling her close. No music played except the natural symphony of crickets and distant frogs, but they didn't need any other accompaniment. They swayed together slowly, their movements perfectly in sync after years of marriage. The moonlight painted silver patterns on the lake's surface, creating a magical atmosphere. Tessa rested her head on Elliot's chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. "Did you ever imagine," she whispered, "that night at the diner would lead to all this?" Elliot's arms tightened around her. "God's plans are always bigger than our pain," he replied. "Though I have to admit, seeing you turn tragedy into triumph has been the greatest privilege of my life." They continued their slow dance as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. The gentle lap of water against the shore provided a peaceful rhythm. In this moment, every tear shed, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt felt worth it. Love had indeed rebuilt something beautiful from the ashes of humiliation. The moon rose higher, casting long shadows across the lawn, but Tessa and Elliot kept dancing, celebrating not just the clinic's opening, but the journey that had brought them here. Every step, every turn reminded them that grace had led them home. The manila envelope sat innocently on their kitchen table one Tuesday morning. Tessa nearly walked past it, her mind focused on the day ahead at the clinic. But Elliot's expectant smile made her pause. "What's this?" she asked, picking up the thick packet. "Open it," he encouraged, his eyes twinkling with barely contained excitement. Tessa carefully broke the seal and pulled out a stack of papers. Her breath caught as she recognized the letterhead, Southern Georgia Medical College, the same nursing school she'd left behind years ago to care for her mother. "Elliot," she whispered, her hands trembling. "You never stopped healing others," he said softly, moving to stand behind her. "Not for a single day. Whether it was caring for your mother, comforting strangers at the diner, or counseling women at the clinic, it's time to make it official." Tears blurred her vision as she read the acceptance letter. Not only had her old credits been reinstated, but she'd been awarded a full scholarship through the Tessa Brown Trust, the very foundation inspired by her story. "But the clinic," she started. "Part-time studies," Elliot explained. 3 evenings a week. You can still run the clinic during the day, mentor the young women who come to us for help. This just gives you one more tool to serve." Tessa turned and buried her face in his chest, overwhelmed by gratitude. This man, who could have given her any material thing, understood that what she needed most was the chance to give back. The next afternoon, Tessa heard the familiar tap of a cane against the clinic's tile floor. Mama Jo moved slower these days, her steps careful, but her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. "There's my baby girl!" Mama Jo called out, her face creasing with joy. "The one who taught the whole world some manners." Tessa hurried to help her to a comfortable chair in the waiting area. "You shouldn't walk all this way alone," she scolded gently. "Pfft!" Mama Jo waved away her concern. "I've been walking this town since before you were born. Besides, I heard the news about nursing school. Had to come congratulate you myself." A young mother waiting nearby perked up at this. "You're going back to school?" she asked Tessa. "Part-time?" Tessa nodded. "Starting next month. After everything that happened?" The woman shook her head in admiration. "You're something else, Mrs. Graham." "Just Tessa," she corrected automatically. "And it's because of everything that happened that I'm going back. Sometimes God uses our worst moments to push us toward our best purpose." Mama Jo's eyes glistened with pride. "Listen to her now," she said to no one in particular. "My baby girl speaking wisdom like she was born to it." The changes weren't limited to Tessa's professional life. As summer faded into autumn, she and Elliot started hosting Sunday dinners at their lakeside home. The first week, only Mama Jo and a few clinic volunteers attended. But word spread quickly about the warm fellowship and amazing food. Soon, familiar faces from town began appearing, including some who had once crossed the street to avoid Tessa. There was no mention of past slights. The tables groaned with covered dishes, and conversation flowed as easily as sweet tea. Elliot's health stabilized with the regular routine and reduced stress. His doctors praised his improved vital signs, though Tessa suspected the healing had more to do with spirit than body. She often caught him watching their gathered guests with quiet satisfaction, as if each shared meal represented another stitch in their community's wounded fabric. One Sunday evening, as golden light slanted through autumn leaves, a local pastor's wife asked Tessa to speak at their women's conference. "Your story has become such a powerful testimony," she explained. "People need to hear it firsthand." Tessa hesitated, but Elliot squeezed her hand encouragingly. "Tell them," he whispered. The following weekend, she stood before hundreds of women from across the state. Her natural hair, now fully regrown, formed a crown of soft curls. Taking a deep breath, she shared her journey from humiliation to healing. "Hate didn't break me," she concluded, her voice strong and clear. "Grace rebuilt me, and that same grace is available to every person who's ever felt shattered by cruelty or shame." The phrase spread like wildfire through social media. Church groups adopted it as a rallying cry for forgiveness. Magazines requested interviews, focusing not on scandal but on redemption. Back at the clinic, Tessa hung a simple wooden plaque in the entrance hall. Carved into its surface were the words that had become her life's testimony. "Hate didn't break me. Grace rebuilt me." Young women entering for counseling often paused to touch the words, drawing strength from their promise. Some cried, recognizing their own struggles in the message. Others straightened their shoulders, finding courage to face another day. Between clinic duties and nursing classes, Tessa's days grew full but purposeful. She discovered that her experiences made her a natural mentor to younger women struggling with self-worth. Her story opened doors that credentials alone could not. One evening, as she studied at the kitchen table, Elliot brought her a cup of tea. "Proud of you," he said simply. Tessa looked up from her textbook, struck by the depth of love in his eyes. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she replied. He shook his head. "You had this strength all along. I just had the privilege of watching you discover it." From her regular seat in the clinic's waiting room, Mama Jo became everyone's unofficial grandmother, dispensing wisdom and hard candies in equal measure. Though her body grew frailer, her spirit remained an anchor for the entire community. "You see that woman there?" she'd tell visitors, pointing to Tessa with undisguised pride. "She's living proof that good manners beat bad intentions every time. When they tried to shame her, she showed them dignity. When they chose hate, she chose grace." The story of the shaved waitress evolved from viral scandal to modern parable. Pastors cited it in sermons about forgiveness. Teachers used it to discuss bullying and redemption. But in their small Georgia town, it became something more personal. A reminder that community could be rebuilt, one Sunday dinner at a time. Tessa's nursing textbooks joined devotionals on her nightstand. Patient care plans mingled with clinic schedules on her desk. Each role, student, mentor, healer, wife, represented another facet of the woman Grace had shaped her to become. And through it all, love continued its quiet work of restoration. In classrooms and clinic rooms, over dinner tables and prayer circles, the message spread. Grace rebuilds what hatred destroys. The truth of those words lived in every life Tessa touched, every heart that found healing, every soul that discovered hope could grow in the most unexpected places. 1 year later, dawn painted the sky in gentle strokes of pink and gold over Joe's diner. The morning light filtered through freshly cleaned windows, casting warm patterns across the well-worn countertops. The familiar scent of coffee and fresh biscuits wafted through the air, a comforting constant in a world that had changed so much. Tessa adjusted her nurse's badge, now as much a part of her daily outfit as her wedding ring. The small piece of plastic represented countless hours of study, late-night cramming sessions, and the unwavering support of her husband. She moved through the diner with the same grace she'd always possessed, but now there was something more, a quiet confidence that radiated from within. At the counter, Elliot sat in his usual spot, newspaper spread before him. His face had softened over the past year, the worry lines around his eyes replaced by gentle creases from smiling. The front page caught his attention, and his eyes crinkled with pride as he read the headline, "From Shame to Grace, Tessa Graham opens Second Healing Center." "Look at this," he called out softly to Tessa as she passed by with a coffee pot. She paused to read over his shoulder, her free hand resting lightly on his back. The article detailed how their foundation had grown, touching thousands of lives across 3 states. What had started as a response to cruelty had blossomed into a movement of healing and hope. Behind them, a crash broke the peaceful morning rhythm. Sarah, the new waitress they'd hired last week, stood frozen in horror over a shattered plate, her face flushing deep red. The poor girl looked ready to cry, her hands trembling as she stared at the mess. Without hesitation, Tessa set down her coffee pot and knelt beside the scattered pieces. "Here," she said softly, reaching for the broom and dustpan they kept nearby. "Let me help you with that." Sarah's voice quivered. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Graham. I'm not usually this clumsy, Everyone starts somewhere." Tessa interrupted gently, her voice warm with understanding. "You should have seen me my first week here. I spilled an entire tray of sweet tea all over table 6. She winked, helping to sweep up the broken pieces. "And please, call me Tessa." The diner's bell jingled merrily as a family pushed through the door, the Hendersons, regulars who'd stood by them during the darkest days. Their youngest daughter, Emma, ran straight to Tessa for a hug, her braids bouncing. "Miss Tessa, Daddy says you're opening another helping place." Emma beamed up at her, missing front tooth on full display. "That's right, sweetheart," Tessa replied, straightening up from the cleaned floor. "Just like the one where your mama volunteers." the diner filled with the sounds of life, clinking silverware, friendly chatter, and laughter that bounced off the walls. Mama Joe's spirit seemed to hover in every corner, though she'd passed peacefully in her sleep 6 months ago. Her last words to Tessa had been, "Keep serving up love, baby girl. It's the best medicine there is." Throughout the morning, Tessa moved between tables, pouring coffee and sharing smiles. She'd kept her Saturday morning shift at the diner, despite her nursing duties and work at the healing centers. "This place is where it all began," she'd told Elliot when he suggested she might want to step back. "Every time I serve someone here, I'm reminded that grace can show up anywhere, even over a plate of scrambled eggs." Regular customers mixed with tourists who'd read about their story. Some still asked to take photos with her, but now the questions were different. Instead of focusing on the scandal, they wanted to know about the healing centers, about forgiveness, about finding strength in faith. Sarah gradually relaxed as the morning progressed, gaining confidence with each successful delivery. Tessa noticed how Elliot left her an extra-large tip, his quiet way of saying, "Keep going." It was these small acts of kindness that had become their signature, their way of paying forward the grace they'd received. As evening approached, the dinner crowd thinned out. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windows, and the neon "Open" sign buzzed softly in the growing dusk. Tessa stepped outside for a moment, her eyes drawn to the mural that had become a local landmark. The painting showed her and Mama Joe, their faces caught in mid-laugh, surrounded by the words, "Love rebuilds," in flowing script. Local artists had captured something special, not just their features, but the spirit of resilience that had transformed their little corner of Georgia. Tessa reached out, her fingers tracing the letters. A prayer of gratitude rose in her heart, wordless but profound. She thought about the journey, from that terrible night of humiliation to this moment of pure peace. The path hadn't been easy, but every step had led to something beautiful. Through the window, she could see Elliot helping Sarah count out her register, showing the same patience he'd shown her when she was learning to navigate public speaking. He looked up, catching her eye, and smiled that smile that still made her heart skip a beat. The last customer waved goodbye as Tessa stepped back inside. The familiar end-of-day routine welcomed her, wiping down tables, counting tips, filling salt shakers. But now these simple tasks felt like a meditation on gratitude, each one a reminder of how far they'd come. Elliot waited by the counter, her coat in his hands. "Ready to head home, Mrs. Graham?" "Almost," she replied, making one final check of the kitchen. Everything was in its place, ready for tomorrow's new beginning. They moved through the closing routine together, their movements synchronized by countless shared evenings. As Elliot turned the key in the lock, Tessa leaned against him, breathing in the peace of the moment. Hand in hand, they stood there for a moment, silhouetted against the darkening sky. The diner's lights dimmed behind them, but the glow in their hearts remained bright, proof that no cruelty could conquer faith, and no darkness could silence love. Their footsteps echoed on the sidewalk as they turned toward home, leaving behind the place where their story had begun, but carrying its lessons forward. The night air was soft with promise, and somewhere in the distance a church bell chimed, its notes floating like a blessing over their little town that had learned, through their example, the transformative power of grace. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.